Hey, we're hanging out in Specialized World Headquarters here in Morgan Hill. We're in the Retül Skunk Works. It really is.
Yeah.
Hanging out, Aaron Post, bike fitter extraordinaire. And what we want to do today is create a quick primer about how you can fit your body to an exercise bike. These are in the gym, we're jumping in and off them, but I don't think we really think about getting a better fit. There's gotta be some basic rules. Do I worry about my foot? Is it this? Where should I begin to kind of make my body fit this exercise equipment?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing, you gotta get your saddle height right. You've gotta have your seat in such a height that the overall length of your leg can comfortably and effectively get to the bottom of the bike.
Is there a simple rule for that?
The easiest way to do it is if you're seated on the bike, you've got the pedal all the way down at the point of terminal extension. So that means it's kind of like in line at the point furthest away.
You're not saying here, because that's shorter. It's actually, this is the furthest away.
Furthest away, usually in line with this kind of seat tube angle. And when you are in a good spot for your overall leg length, hip down to pedal. When your heel is on the pedal, knee will be fully straight.
I should be able to flex my quads.
Yes.
And get my legs straight.
Flex your quad, put your heel on top of the pedal. If you have a bend in your knee, you need to raise that saddle height up a little bit.
So I shouldn't necessarily be like, oh, knee forward, knee two. Looking at this bottom position is really the good start place.
That's the best place to start.
If I jump on this,
yep,
and I'm like, I'm in this position, this is a niche for you because I got a knee bend, right?
You got a little bit of bend there. I'd want to raise your saddle a little bit.
So if I go up a notch, right? Yep. Now I'm kind of there.
That feels pretty close.
This is pretty close. Okay, so let's say that I'm here. Now, okay, so I've roughly got my saddle height. I can look at the number on the back here and kind of figure out where I am. I knew where that was before, right? I can get this locked out. What's nice is that this is the saddle height that we had already chosen, right, for myself. So I was close there. Where do my feet go on the pedals, right? Because, I mean, look, I understand that some of us have stiff quads, some of us are missing hip range of motion. We may be doing different things for the body to solve this mechanical problem. But if I make the seat first, should I worry about where my foot goes on this big bear trap pedal?
Honestly, self-selection is really going to guide you here.
Well, come on, man. I want to rule.
So long as your saddle is in a good height and you're not compensating in some other way, you're not up on your toes because your saddle's too high, you're not dragging your heels because your saddle's too low, start spinning and feel where your foot feels most stable. Some people might feel a little bit better, more up on the ball of their foot. They're spinning a high RPM. They feel like they're up on their toes a little bit. Then maybe being on that forward part of their foot feels best for them. Maybe if you're pushing out a lot of power and you're more used to being kind of more centered on the pedal, that's fine. Usually, if people are struggling to find the position of their foot on the pedal, it's not because the pedal's in the wrong spot or their foot's in the wrong spot. It's because their saddle's in the wrong spot. I love it.
That's such a good rule. That makes intuitive sense. So, okay, so first set that seat height, start to be comfortable with that, and really just be able to, I can nail that pretty quickly. And high reliability there, right? I mean, especially within, we're not talking about a millimeter of perfect aerodynamic position. We're like, hey, basic setup for your bike. Because I think a lot of people don't get this. Then I don't have to worry about my pedal. Let me ask you this about pedals. If I'm pedaling like this, is that good or bad or weird?
Toe in, toe out, again, is dictated by the unique needs of the individual. Some people might have a little bit more external femoral rotation and their toes point out a little bit more. Somebody might be more biased towards the inside. Again, just allowing your foot to naturally go where it wants is going to be your best judge. You want to take it a step further. You want to know, like, well, does my foot do that because it wants to do that or because I'm compensating for something else? You could pretty easily sit in a chair, sit at 90 degrees, take a look down. Where does your foot naturally fall? Even elevate it a little bit up off the ground. See if you're naturally toed out or toed in or straight. And you should be relatively close to what your body naturally wants to do off the bike when you're pedaling on the bike.
That's really interesting. We did a big talk about that recently, and people did not like my sit-down box foot test. And I said, you can sit down and that's your position, that's pretty much your position.
Nailed it.
Love it. Okay, so now I'm starting to get these things, and I'm not worried about my feet so much, especially since I'm on a flat trap pedal, right? This is a bear trap. Talk to me about where I should be putting the handlebars. I feel like this is like no person's land, right? I
Yeah.
get these things down. Seems like if I'm missing hip flexion, I know I'm stiff in the hips. Being a little bit higher
Yep.
makes this better,
Yeah.
or at least unloads that.
There is a ton of variability in where handlebars need to be relative to the saddle position based on the range of motion and upper body strength and stability of the rider. The more flexible a rider is in their hamstrings and in their glutes, the more range of motion they have to come forward. Typically, they're going to have a little bit lower handlebar position. And
Does that matter, do you think, in terms of the force production I'm developing in a spin class without aerodynamic demands?
100%. As you're rotating further forward, you're lengthening your glute musculature. So if your handlebars are too high for your range of motion, now your glutes are already in a shortened state. You're not going to get any glute recruitment. You're not going to work out those glutes if they're already kind of in that like shortened state.
I saw that world champion from Germany, track cyclist, Robert, I forget his last name, and he has these quads that are just monstrous.
Yep.
And when he was trying to fight a toaster for peak wattage, he reached down and literally was just in a position where he was on his drops, even though he was indoors. And that's what you're saying, is that this put him in a mechanically better position where he could generate more force.
As you're reaching down here, you need to roll your hips further forward and you're lengthening your glute musculature. So that way, when you're at the top of your pedal stroke, that glute's fully lengthened. Then you send that electrical impulse. Let's shorten, let's use that force generator to extend my hip. You've got greater force application coming from the back of your body.
So full caveat or full disclosure, I sometimes go to spin classes.
Yep.
My kids love it. And I see these stiff guys upright.
Yep.
And they're just dancing. They can only go at 110 and they can't ever generate high wattage. And that may be because they're just in a position that their mechanics don't even allow them to adopt a shape where they can really develop more force.
Right. You got two big power producers. Your glute musculature up in your hip, your quads in your thighs. If you're sitting way upright like that, you're only relying on your quad musculature. You need to get into that forward flex position within your range of motion in order to recruit some of that glute musculature.
So basic rule is, how would I know if my handlebars are too low? Because it seems like I want to be in a position, and this gives me a ton of variability, right?
Yeah.
Like this thing is set up for a tiny person, but I'm obviously reaching for the front of the handlebars.
Yeah.
So if I'm here, what is there a rule of thumb, or just thinking, hey, I want to be in a position where I can take a big breath, I can keep my head in line and generate good wattage and use my wattage as a guide?
I like to use a little bit of off the bike assessment to guide the overall height of your handlebars relative to your saddle. So if off the bike, you can do a forward bend like a standing toe touch, and you can comfortably get down and maybe even touch your toes or touch the ground. You've got all that range of motion. You're probably going to end up with a handlebar position that's a little bit lower than your saddle. As you start to come up, okay, I can only get to my shins. Maybe I need to be a little bit closer to level. Or if I can only get to my knees, then those handlebars are probably going to need to start somewhere above the saddle height.
That seems very reasonable.
Yep.
Because we all know that producing watts is fun, so producing more watts is more fun.
You got it.
Thank you.